Hi, I am Viljami Lappalainen and this is my vlog. Today I'm going to talk about how I think about the world. Well, I think I earlier mentioned how I think that what we experience it is produced by our cognitions. So everything we ever in a way know or think experience it is within our mind because that is what it actually means to have a mind and experience. It is so we are contained in our experiences, and that is very fascinating because I like to use uh, Bayesian probabilities as metaphor for our situation because essentially we can have only different explanations for the world that have different probabilities that we can update distributions of probabilities of these different explanations based on our observations, but we can never know how world really is because there are infinite number of different explanations. And I like to use idea of Marcus Hutter how we use simplest explanations as most likely. He used this uh, universal Turing machine with different programs. Programs of length 1 initially have half of the probability distribution. Programs of length 2 have half of the rest, 25% of probability mass, and so on ad infinitum. And then these probabilities of different models are um, updated based on what we observe, how likely they were to be produced by these different programs. Okay, so that is metaphor I use to understand our situation, that there are infinite number of explanations that have different initial probabilities, and we can only have update probability distribution of these different models instead of ever knowing what world is actually like. Okay, so that is how I think about our situation as minds in a world. We are produced by our cognition, and everything we ever experience is cognition, but cognition is based on data produced by our senses. Okay, and now the other interesting idea I like to think about is how knowing can have sort of different aspects. We can have these observations that are sort of knowledge in a way. We have data about the world based on our senses, and so these observations are this data. We can have these probabilities distributions about the world, which then it's another form of knowledge to have updated our models based on these observations. But beyond these two, I think we have also knowledge in form of action procedures, in a way that are how we do things in a world. That is also knowledge. If I know how to say write an essay, I have some sort of structured way of doing it. and that in itself seems to be some kind of a knowledge. And I feel it is distinct from probability distributions and observations in a way that I, I like to use algorithms themselves as metaphor to understanding how these action procedures can be. And I feel it is actually necessary to consider these distinct from probability distributions about the different models and observations, because what we do can actually change the world. So we can sort of produce knowledge by supplanting our ideas, supplanting things in a world with our ideas. So it doesn't matter what was there before, since now we know what there is currently, and knowing how to do things is, it seems, some in some way distinct from knowing different models, because even if I know with high certainty that different models, I might not still know how to utilize that knowledge about the world. So how to use world is not actually inherent in the knowledge about the world. It's just so actually algorithms themselves seem to be some kind of a knowledge to me. And another interesting kind of knowledge seems to come from, in a way, how consensual reality is, in a way that it is similar to what I said earlier, how we can sort of supplant state of the world with another, and thus gaining knowledge how things are now. So because if I act as if something is true, then that acting as if creates a sort of new interface for others to act, which itself is fascinating form of, if I know how um, others have decided to act, it is not actually mm, observational world. It's not necessary about the sort of distribution of different explanations about the world. It is just sort of arbitrary choice others or myself have made. So I think there is some kind of knowledge beyond observations, distributions of models, or different algorithms, in that this consensual reality that is created through sort of determination to act arbitrarily. And that, I think, is sort of fourth kind of knowledge that I like to think about. But right now I don't have much else to say. Thank you for anybody who bothered to listen through this all, and I hope you have a good day. Thanks and bye.